Thank you for tuning in to Growing Tech Fast, the Org3D podcast. And this is a condensed podcast in which conversations about growing SaaS startups are had with those who have grown them. Today, we are joined by an award-winning channel sales leader who has been in the security business for over 20 years, Carrie Roberts. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Joe. Really appreciate it.
No worries. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing wonderful. Given all these interesting times that we're in, you wake up every day and you feel great. So it's as long as your eyes are opening, it's a good thing. So
absolutely. Well, that's really great to hear, Carrie. So I suppose, just to kind of start things off, we can just, talk about your sort of current situation right now. You joined your current company, CyCognito, in July of this year. So in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, you managed to secure a fantastic opportunity. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at CyCognito?
Sure. So I run our global channel sales for this startup. They've been around for about 2 years. And so my role is to really go out and build that business, identify those partners. We had a handful of partners when I first started, but really identifying the product and technology that would fit into a certain partner ecosystem, as well as educating the internal organization around how we're going to use partners moving forward. So it's been an interesting role to be both a individual contributor, recruiter, educator, building a program, defining how we're going to go to market. So it's kind of the master of many things and trying to put it all together in one comprehensive program and go to market strategy.
Fantastic. And obviously, I've done a little bit of research into CyCognito. You're 80 employees strong. So you say startup, Series B, well-backed funding, 53 million, I believe.
Yes.
So why were you brought in at this stage, Carrie? What was the thinking behind that? Obviously, as you say, you've been in the business and this channel development business for 20 years, but what was so sort of unique about this moment in time for you to come to CyCognito?
I looked at a lot of companies and I looked at a lot of companies with you, Joe, and we worked together on some opportunities. And the one thing I looked at CyCognito was it offered a little bit different cybersecurity technology. And I think that's one element in your cybersecurity life that you go through is to be constantly challenging yourself to learn more, learn about new technologies, understand what's out there in the market, understand what maybe we have not been doing maybe we're doing something different today than the way we did it 20 years ago. And that's the way I looked at CyCognito. They were, from a technology perspective, very much looking at cybersecurity in a different approach, very much from the reconnaissance, from being more on the offensive. And that really intrigued me from a product perspective. But why did they bring me in from a company perspective? I have to give them some credit as well, because obviously going through a growing pandemic, they weren't putting on the brakes as far as go to market. And as you well know, Joe, when you're building out a business, it takes time. And whether you're in a pandemic, maybe an economic downturn, we've all been through those different elements in our careers, or if you haven't been, you will be going through them in some point in your career, of those challenging economic or world times. And I have to give them some credit that they understood that it was going to take some time for us to build out our program, build out our recruitment, build out our channel partners for them to be successful. And as you probably well know, in the cybersecurity space, the pandemic hasn't slowed cybersecurity down. We continue to face challenges. We continue to face attackers. And the cybersecurity landscape is very, very healthy right now. And we're trying to do everything we can to be more proactive on protecting corporations and individuals.
Absolutely. So it sounds like, it all sort of came together, as you say, that interesting tech
Mhm.
I like that, sort of differentiated there. You said, Carrie, the offensive rather than the defenses. It's
Mhm.
not so much reacting, but being sort of proactive, which has attracted you there, which is, sounds like
Yes.
fascinating technology.
It is very fascinating technology, and I'm finding that, enterprise corporations, are still very much aggressive on building out their, continuing to build out their cybersecurity practice. I find that the SMB business has been hit very, very hard with this pandemic, and we're losing a lot of wonderful, wonderful companies because of it, that they just cannot economically hang on. And so this product fits a mid-enterprise to enterprise level. And so it's been a very fun roller coaster to be on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this is I think I joined just a little bit before July. And so, I've been here about 4 months, and we're seeing some great growth. We're seeing some wonderful interest from large global enterprises, from large global systems integrators, large value-added resellers that really are seeing a difference to take this product to market.
Amazing. I mean, so I suppose a question there then, Carrie, is,
Mhm.
obviously, what is the point where a company decides to move from direct to channel? When do you come into play? You specifically, who's been
Mhm.
there and done that and built it out.
It varies at each stage, Joe. It's a fun journey, but I think when an organization truly understands that they cannot hire enough individuals themselves, we talk about so much of the cybersecurity gap with people that actually know cybersecurity, to be able to work within an enterprise, and there's like 1.5 million jobs available. Well, you have to think about the same thing on the sales side. We have the same struggle to make sure we have educated people on the sales side, to be able to fulfill that opportunity for us to go out and resell our technology. But really, when you have great leaders, and I certainly see CyCognito with some incredible leadership talent, which is another reason why I came here, because they saw the vision of already going in that strategy of moving to a channel ecosystem and moving towards that 100% channel. And given that they sell into the enterprise space, they realized that we need to build that infrastructure now, so that come 2021, when we move into this new year and we can put 2020 behind us and kind of put our cap on that one and move forward, that we would have the channel available, because we can't hire enough people in each geography. And especially as you look at a global role, it's easier to hire and work with channel partners than it is to hire your own staff. Now that comes with its own sets of challenges, but I think it gives us a great opportunity to actually expand our footprint quickly. We're actually growing faster internationally than we are in the United States, which is where I'm based. And so we're actually seeing our revenue growth outside the US being much stronger right now than in the US. So that's even more of a reason to build our channel on internationally, where we have language barriers, where we have business contractual terms that we need to operate within a geography. So it's being much more visionary, and I think that just goes to a lot of cybersecurity companies, that they're trying to grab onto that channel much quicker and faster. And again, you get the diversity of managed service providers, global systems integrators, and a number of varieties of different types of partners.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for that, Carrie. That's a real
Mhm.
insight for me and for our listeners. A big thing that we like to sort of, look at in this podcast is overcoming challenges. And in the startup world, many challenges need to be overcome. And, and you outlined many just then, actually,
Right.
in regard to building out direct sales globally and where the
Mhm.
channel can come in and help. But I suppose one challenge that I would like to talk to you about, Carrie, which, is something that I'm pretty, sort of passionate about, actually. And I think it's something that, needs to be addressed. But I've done a bit of some more research, a lot of research gone into this podcast. And here's a fact for you. So according to LinkedIn, Carrie,
Mhm.
around 40% of workforce in sales is women.
Mm.
So 40%, and that's in sales across all the board. So a little pop quiz for you.
Oh dear.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Cool. Okay. So so I've dug into this a bit further. And my question is, what do you think the percentage of the workforce in cybersecurity sales, direct and channel, is women?
I'm going to say it's probably a little bit just lower than that. I'd say it's between 30 to 35% are women.
So the research that I've done, which is pretty, I think, pretty accurate, suggests that it's around 6%.
Mm. Yeah, and
6%.
that's pretty scary to think about that when you're
That's
especially
very
being a
scary.
woman, you know. That's
Absolutely. And then you put that on top, Carrie, and
oh,
imagine even less then are in leadership positions.
yep. That's for sure, and that was one of the reasons. You know, I will be honest with you about working at an organization. I do look at the women in leadership within that organization. I'm interviewed with several organizations that were 100% men, and there's nothing wrong with that. Um, First of all, but the second point is that as a woman interviewing, you look at that leadership organization, and oftentimes you look and go, that's not a place I'm going to be successful, because there's not the belief or the trust. And I think it comes down to a little bit of trust that they've broken that glass, they've broken that barrier. They've said, no, look, we have, and I don't mean to say this maybe but I often think there's always a token woman in the leadership role, usually in HR or marketing, one of those two.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that, and then the rest of the leadership, and depending on how big the leadership team is, will often take you back and look and say, no, that's not what I'm not interested in that. And I do find it in pockets. It seems like there's certain pockets around the world that are a little more strong leadership with men versus the women. But that is an element that you do have to ask and question. And I think as women growing up in the cybersecurity business, you have to challenge leadership on why don't they have women in leadership? Why hasn't there been any women on their leadership organization? Why are there no women on their board as leadership in organizations? You look at many venture capitalists; they have women in their organizations, and why is that particular cybersecurity doesn't have any? So I think it's important as women in the organization or women who are looking to go into cybersecurity to actually challenge that as part of your interview process. I think it's, I think you will be much happier. I know I have been much happier in my career when I have asked those challenging questions. It doesn't always make a comfortable situation, but I think it's important that if that's something you want, if that's something you want to grow into, if that's something you want to advance to, that you're constantly challenging. And not just because you're a woman, but because you believe you can actually add value to the organization that you are trying to help lead and change going forward.
Absolutely, Carrie. I mean, I think that's some very, it shows that you've come from a very experienced place there. You've obviously overcome a lot of these challenges over the past years. But let's, rewind 20 years to the 90s. Yeah.
It was a good time. It was a good time.
I mean, you know what? I mean, 6% in 2020. I mean, it must have been, gosh, one or less.
1%.
I mean, what made you want to go into the cyberspace?
I had a really good friend that I had been in technology. I'd left technology and gone into the hospitality industry for a while in a leadership role there. I was able to very much step into a leadership role into the hospitality, working for a large hotel chain. Um, and when a good friend of mine asked me to come back into technology, he gave me a chance to move into a leadership role. And his advice was to me was, look, I can teach you all about technology, but I can't teach you about business. That's something that you have that's just something you have as a savvy. So I think as women, we need to rely on our own personal strengths, whether it's maybe you're very savvy in business, maybe you're very savvy in accounting, maybe you're very savvy in science and mathematics. I think you have to rely on your strengths, but I think also sometimes you just need a break. Sometimes you just need somebody that has confidence in you, that says, look, you can try anything. And I think that's important, that women understand that they can try anything. They don't have to know. Sometimes I think we want to have everything lined up perfectly. We want to have all of our ducks in a row, as they say. We want to be 110% prepared. And that's not necessarily the way the other gender thinks. The other gender thinks is, I'm going to go in there and prove myself. Whereas I think sometimes we want to have everything all laid out just so it's perfectly organized. And I think we have to take more chances. I think as women, we have to step in, we have to take more chances. We have to fail. There's been many a times that I have failed. I can look back at my career and wish I would have, well, if I would have done that 20 years, I could have been far more successful. If I would have done that 15 years ago, I would have been far more successful. But it's our failures that make us all strong, regardless of gender. It's our failures that make us better people. And I think it's important that we as women challenge our own personal selves, challenge our organizations, and more importantly, don't be afraid to fail. It's okay. We don't have to have all the answers. And, build up your network, build up your network of people, build up your network. Make sure you have lots of great women, make sure you have lots of great men in your ecosystem, because it truly is a network that has moved my career along. I have not just, landed into a job. It's been my career network, people like yourself, Joe, that know each other. We have a relationship, people that you have as your network around you. It's my network that got me this job. My organization did a lot of back channeling to find out should they really hire me. And I had some amazing people that gave some great recommendations. But I think it's always important that you are challenging your organization, but you also just have to take those chances. As women, we need to be more aggressive and not be so afraid of failure.
I mean, exactly as you say, that's across the board. We need to be like this, that's how you become stronger. You fail, and you fail. I mean, one of my heroes, probably don't know him, he's a British bloke actually, but he has a great quote saying, in order to become a great horseman, you have to fall off and get up again a great number of times.
Yep.
And that's the same in every life.
Yep.
And it sounds like, you had that real sort of change in your attitude, Carrie, when your friend invited you back in and sort of gave you that kind of, sort of lifeline. I mean, that sounds like a massive, turning point in your career.
Was a very big turning point in my career. I didn't know anything about channels when I joined the company. I never even had heard of channels. This was for a very large antivirus company here in the United States. And, it was a great opportunity. I just felt like, hey, this was an opportunity for me to try something new. And that's what we need to do as individuals, is consistently challenge yourself. Don't sit at a company for 5-10 years thinking this is as good as it's going to be. I have so many colleagues that are sitting there going, oh, but it's a great company, Carrie, and I've got great insurance. I've got great. Oh, okay. Then you're going to do the same job you've always done, because sometimes even as individuals, we get stuck within our own company, and our company doesn't see us as value. Whereas when sometimes you switch companies, and that's can be very scary during these pandemic times, But sometimes even when you switch companies, you'll find that a company sees you more valuable.
Absolutely. And I mean, it sounds like really, that I suppose it's all about taking the risks, isn't it? And it's whether those risks pay off or not, But I suppose the startup journey is all about risk. It's all about
100%.
risk.
And there are people that really like and thrive on risk, right? That works into my DNA. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't always work into everybody's DNA. So I think it's important that you challenge even your own psyche. Are
Yeah.
you somebody that can afford to go, and it's not always affording, because I haven't always afforded, when the company's folded and I've been looking at turning off the lights and walking out the door going, now where am I going? There is that fear, right? But Joe, because again, going back to your network, building out your network, even when I have lost my job, the company's folded, we haven't been successful, to be able to call out to that network, hey, I'm looking for a new opportunity, right? This is what I want. And I think it's important to clearly understand what you want. What do you want as your next opportunity? And as women, we need to clearly define what we're looking for. It's not always the way you see it. And this is a great example of CyCognito. I wanted certain things, and my boss, Jason Braun, was certainly very accommodating to what I was looking for personally. There are those things that I wanted as well, which he just, the company as a startup just couldn't do, which is okay, right? It's out on the table, you've put it out there. So I think it's important that you always have your network, you build out that network, and especially as women, we take those extra steps of risk in ensuring that we're constantly moving forward. And you don't want to be standing still, especially in pandemic times or economic times or lifetimes. If you're not moving forward, you're not growing, and that's important to do. So
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I think that's fantastic advice, Carrie, for anyone, but especially for women. In this current situation we're in. We've talked a lot there about challenges and overcoming challenges. But we're speaking here, listeners, to an award-winning channel leader, and what I really want to just not I don't want I want to finish the podcast on something really really
Sure.
good. So, what has been the highest moment in your startup career, Carrie?
Oh, Joe, I think that some of my highest moments have been when I have been able to hire someone, and then that person has moved and gone on to a greater role outside of, moved on and moved up and moved around and has just done really well in their career. That's one of my favorite things and most memorable things for me, is the people that I've been able to work with, hire, associate with, and then to see them go on and lead companies and move into new and challenging roles that are completely out. Maybe they've gone from sales to maybe more of a technical role. And I love to see people growing. I think that's one of my favorite things. And then if I could, my second thing is I love being part of seeing a company grow and either acquire other companies where we've actually gotten big enough that we're now going and saying, we'd like to buy this company, or where we're valuable enough that that somebody wants to buy us, and being part of that leadership organization that gets to be part of those conversations has been a real fun education for me, to be part of the mergers and acquisition side, which typically in sales, we don't get to be part of that, but to really see the success of a company grow, and I guess individual growth as well.
That's excellent. I mean, that's excellent to hear from a sales leader, that the number one sort of your greatest joy comes from developing people.
Yeah,
Well,
love
look,
that.
Carrie, thank you so much
Mm-hmm.
for coming on. It's been really insightful. Thank you for all your thoughts. I've loved the conversation as ever. It's always a joy to
As
speak
always,
with
Joe.
you. And I want to leave the podcast. I want to leave our listeners with one final word from you, Carrie. If you could give a piece of advice, central theme of this podcast has been women in cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
If you could give our women listeners out there one piece of advice to get into the cybersecurity space, what would it be?
If it could be one piece of advice, it would be to think of every person you meet in cybersecurity as a potential next employer. Every single person you meet, you talk to, think of them as a possible interview, think of them as a possible next employer, think of them as a possible the next person that's going to help you, challenge you, ask you to come and join their company because of the value you bring because of the value they believe you bring. And just always approach every single person that way. And I think you're going to be much more successful, because cybersecurity isn't all about what you know in cybersecurity. It's about the relationships. It's a very small family, Joe, as you well know. In cybersecurity, we often all pass around each other and, you know, see each other in different areas of the world periodically. And it's important that you think of every individual you meet as your next potential employer or opportunity.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Carrie Roberts. You've listened to Growing Tech Fast, the Org3D podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.